Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jaime Koppel, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the co-director of Communities for Just Schools Fund, and I'm so glad that you're here with us for this, our inaugural coffee and conversation. Welcome. We're really serious about warm beverages in this space, so please do join us in filling your cup. We really hope that this conversation will do the same. We're going to be hosting these coffee and conversation events more or less monthly, and so please help us spread the word. We're going to drop a link in the chat to subscribe to our newsletter where we uplift our partners' work and opportunities like this. So if you're not already subscribed, we hope you'll do so. And before I turn to introductions of some incredible women who I am so honored to think of and call friends and to conspire with for justice and liberatory possibilities. If you're new to CJSF, we're a national collaborative that exists to bring together the resources of philanthropy and the power of grassroots organizing to transform education and communities. CJSF just released our 2022 annual report, and it's laid out like a resource guide, so you can learn more about our work there. And we'll go ahead and drop that in the chat for you all as well. So here we are in Women's History Month and on the day after International Women's Day. And we're here with a few of the most rad, caring, and brilliant women I know. Sydney McKinney, Jamala Denny, and Natalie Collier. I also want to say thank you to Jennifer Farmer, whose efforts made it possible for us to come together today. Each of you, my friends, each of you are writing new chapters for future history books every day. And I don't say this lightly in a moment in which state legislators and local officials are literally introducing bills and policies designed to erase histories of resistance and possibility. And so I'm excited to talk with you all about how the work you are doing calls women, girls, and gender-expansive youth into building and wielding their power. And I'm excited for us to share together with our audience how they can take action in support of your work. So to our audience, please know that we welcome your questions and your ideas, and we encourage you to share them with us in the chat. We're going to spend about 30 minutes just talking with each other before we take the time to turn to you for your questions and ideas. And in order to warm up the space, we've got the coffee or the tea or whatever your choice of beverage was, but we're going to start with the warm introductions. And so really going to invite each of the folks who are here with us today to introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization. And Sydney, we'll come to you first.
Thank you so much, Jaime. I'm so excited to be here today in this space with you and Jamala and Natalie to talk about our work. I'm the executive director of the National Black Women's Justice Institute, which is a Black women-led nonprofit organization that aims to eliminate racial and gender disparities in the US criminal legal system that are responsible for its disproportionate impact on Black women, girls, and gender-expansive people. We engage in rigorous research and capacity building in order to transform the current system and promote policy change that centers and uplifts the voices, experience, and expertise of system-impacted Black women, girls, and gender-expansive folks. Through our work, we seek to dismantle the punitive paradigm driving the US criminal legal system and build in its place pathways to healing and opportunity. At NBWJI, we envision a society where healing and not punishment is upheld as justice. And we focus on Black girls and Black women because the disparities they face within the criminal legal system are often marginalized, overlooked, and ignored. So I'm gonna pass it on to Jamala.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you for all the work that you do with your organization. Also happy to be in space with you and Natalie today. My name is Jamala My pronouns are she and her. I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York. I'm on Lenape land. I work for Girls for Gender Equity. We work intergenerationally alongside Black girls. And when we say girls, we mean cis and trans girls, gender nonconforming youth, and gender expansive young people. We work to create the world that they deserve, particularly the schools that they deserve, so that they're not facing push out and they have access to all of life's chances. We work kind of special because we do policy work in addition to programming. So I get to hang out with young people every day and see how they recognize their power and in changing the isms and the systems that are oppressing us. I'll pass it over to Natalie.
Good morning. Thank you. I am in a hotel in San Francisco. I would rather be home in Jackson, Mississippi. But work calls and I try to answer most times. So I lead the work at the Lighthouse Black Girl Projects. And the work that we do, we call leadership development work. And for us, leadership development work shows up in a myriad ways, a myriad forms, and with a whole lot of different kinds of folks. Folks who identify as girls, and then some folks who are trying to figure it out. And so we do work primarily in the southeastern part of the country. And we work with folks at whatever point they are when we meet them, based on their interests. So that looks like policy work, it looks like programming, it looks like research, it looks like media. So we try to meet girls, asterisk, at whatever point we can, because we know that people don't come in pieces. And so we don't do school and then live a new part of life. I think I'll let policy impact me today. Like, that's not how life works. And so we try to just encompass as much work responsibly as we can.
Thanks to each of you for just sharing that. I know from being in friendship with each of you how much you bring your full selves into the work that you just described. And so thank you for bringing your full selves into this conversation today and for flexing to be here from all the different spaces and places you're joining from and all that required of you. I'd love us to just jump into conversation. And I'm sitting here thinking about the fact that the umbrella for today's conversation is Women's History Month. And as I said in our opening, CJSF honors each of you as people who are really making history right now. As I was kind of grounding myself and thinking through this conversation earlier today, I was thinking about folks like Marsha P. Johnson and Ella Baker and Septima Clark. And some of the ways that you all, at Natalie, I'm thinking about some of the ways I've learned much more deeply about the legacy of Septima Clark through work that the Lighthouse has done and lifted, as just one example. So just inviting you all to share with us, how are you sitting with or reflecting on Women's History Month? What would you want us to be thinking about with you?
I can jump in. I'm always thinking about the shoulders we stand on, and I am so honored to be able to do the work that we do at the National Black Women's Justice Institute, and recognize that we could not be here and exist and be leading the kind of work that we lead if it weren't for Black women who really paved the way and created these opportunities for us, really fought for our visibility and people to recognize and see our value. Unfortunately, this is work that we must continue today. And so at the National Black Women's Justice Institute, we really do see our work as a liberatory project for Black women and girls and gender expansive folks. Dismantling the criminal legal system as it exists is really about Black liberation and freedom, and centering Black women and girls in that process. The other thing that we really tried to do as an organization this month, and also Black History Month, is to remind folks that the criminalization of Black women and girls is not a new phenomenon, that this is has a long history. And we really do appreciate and look to Black women historians who've been telling these stories of criminalization and incarceration, and importantly, our resistance to that. And wanting to make sure that folks understand that this work that we're doing is part of a much larger project and a liberatory project for Black people.
I think when I am when I think about Women's History Month, one of the things that I automatically do is put the word Black in front of it. It's really important to me that we are specific in the things that we are celebrating, fighting against, fighting for. And so I think without the modifier, whatever the modifier is for you, whoever you are, that Women's History Month, outside of the modifier, it's just something people came up with for me. And I think a lot of that is because if we aren't careful to add specifics, we find ourselves in a position where the thing that happens all the time will happen, will continue to happen, which means that, if we're talking about Women's History Month, people automatically are going to think about white women, right? When we're talking about Black History Month, for the most part, people are going to automatically think about Black men. And I think of those of us, the book title, those of us who are brave, right? That all the men, what is it? All the men are white, all the women are white, all the men are Black, but some of us are brave. And so I think modifiers are really important.
Natalie, can I invite you to talk with us about how you hold that container, and just even the way you've structured the Lighthouse Black Girl projects and named them? I know that you hold that as a frame well outside of the months that you named. What would you name for us all?
One, again, I think nomenclature is very important. And we work really hard at putting into praxis, just as a part of our everyday work and our everyday way of being, some of the things that oftentimes we have to, like in a gathering of people, say, for example, that we might have to take time away to do a thing. So like the projects at the Lighthouse Black Girl projects, the actual projects are named for folks. Some of them are Black women that people know. Some of them aren't, right? Because I think that in the spirit of resistance and resilience and revolution, that all of the warriors aren't names like Ella Baker, right? And I love me some Ella Baker, right? A part of how the Lighthouse got its name is because of Ella Baker. But not but and um Ella Baker had an aunt that nobody knew her name. And that is who inspired Ella Baker or whoever else, you know. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but this is my response to your question, Jamie. I just think it is so important to not just think about and acknowledge um, the fancy folk, the folk we put up on pedestals, um,
Mhm.
because as Alice Walker just showed us, right? You put somebody on a pedestal, and she will surely come tumbling down. Um, and at the same time, um, Alice Walker, just like whoever else, is human, and have the right to be wrong, super wrong, right? You can be super wrong. Um, but she didn't ask to be up there. Well, I mean, uh, anyway, yeah, that's my response, Jamie.
I mean, I see Jamala coming off mute, and I just want to crazy for like, thank you. I hoped you would say that, because that, for me, and being a friend and a partner to you all, has been one of my biggest learnings, is that as we talk about power, and I hope we'll go there next, like, what does it really mean to hold the fullness and the nuance of people, not just those who stand in the spotlight, but those who hold the work and the knowledge that we need to move forward together. So thank you for that. But Jamala, what would you want us to hold? What are you thinking about with Women's History Month? Or what would you like to share?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Natalie. I also saw the Alice Walker stuff. It was, what is going on? But I think that just reaffirms my belief and like pride in collective action. I think that a lot of the times we are looking for the one person that we can put up on the pedestal. We're looking for, like, often people today say there are no Black leaders today. Like, that's not true. There's so much collective leadership. There's so much collective action happening right now. And seeing the strength and power in that makes me hopeful for the future. And when we think about women's history, and even Black history, I want us to reframe that to think about like women's futures, Black women's futures, because we don't want to be doing this forever, right? We don't want to be fighting fights forever. We want to create a world where Black women and girls are not fighting. They're thriving, they're celebrated, they're uplifted. And I think that's often forgotten when we look at the histories, but there was joy and there will be joy. So that's what I wanted to offer. Thank you.
Ooh. So I just want to name 3 things that I hope we can get to in this conversation, right? I think there's the ways in which you're all pointing at the need to clap back at erasure, right? Like that we need to, and when we tell our story of CJSF and like our why is because we know that what has always propelled the kind of change this nation has to be held better accountable for, it is Black women, it is Black people, It is Indigenous folks, right? It is the folks whose stories of struggle and resistance end up getting erased from the stories that we tell. That's not a new struggle, even though it's playing out in new, really scary ways right now. So I just want like, let's keep the like the light shined really brightly on like how you are all doing work to ensure that erasure is not what continues to be allowed to happen. But I also heard you talking about joy and healing. And so I want to make sure that we touch about all of those on all of those things because they feel so important. But if I can hold us in one spot that I don't want us to go any further without touching upon, it's power. Because we've talked about power and we've talked about how problematic it can be, but y'all are about the business of building power. And so is it okay? Can we talk about power first before we go to healing and joy? All right. So here's my question. And I'm gonna mute and invite y'all to take it where you want to go. But what does it look like? What are y'all doing to center the leadership of girls, of women, gender expansive youth, of Black folks, and doing it? How are you doing it in ways that are intentional about supporting folks and building and wielding power? What do you want us all to know about that?
I would offer that it takes time. I think that when we're talking about this community of Black youth, Black girls, and gender expansive young people, um, there's a training, there's an indoctrination that says your voice doesn't matter, that says that this is the way that things are, and this is the way that they're going to be, and this is the way that they should be. So there's a long process of unlearning all of that. There's a long process of rejecting that um, before you can even begin to build your own power or build power with others. And because we're talking about these communities, we don't have the same opportunities to make mistakes that other communities might have. So what I do is try to create safe spaces where Black girls and young people can make those mistakes, can have those missteps, because they're learning, they're unlearning and they're learning. So we're piloting a mentorship program right now at GGE, where we're calling back our alum that have graduated from our programs to provide guidance to current programs youth, taking the ideas that they have that they're coming from their communities and giving them the resources and the support that they might not have alternatively, and hoping and helping that their projects really come to fruition. So I'll pass it off to the other speakers if y'all have other things to add.
I think yes, to everything that Jamala just said. And I think the other thing that's really important in building power is an examination of power. Can build, well, I mean, you can build and then you end up like how we are. So it is judicious to build and examine at the same time. Because power is a really tricky thing, right? Especially when you individually and collectively are have been dispossessed, right? And so if we're not careful to have the lessons, holding the lessons, the history and the future, thank you for that, at the same time, we'll find ourselves in a position where we're doing the same things that power has always done. And so one of the things that's really important for us is talking with people that we work with about responsible freedom. Like on your journey, on your individual, your personal journey toward freedom, it's really important to keep in mind that some of the things that you can do, that you have the liberty to do, might impact people in community, right? And so what does that mean? That's also an examination of power. That just because something is okay for me to do, but it might negatively impact community as a whole, is that really the best thing for me to do? Right. And I think that's not a thing that we're accustomed to power doing, questioning itself in that way. And so as we look to build power, we want to build and examine constantly. And that's tiring, right? That is tiring, but it's also necessary.
Oh, Sydney, I can't wait to hear where you keep us going. I just want to name collective care, and how hard collective care is and how I hear it is so embedded in just responsible freedom, Natalie. And thank you for reminding us that this is hard work, but so, so worthy and so important.
Yeah, I agree. I think both of what you said is so important. And Natalie, what you were saying about examining power is so critical. And in our work, one of the things we want the communities that we work with to be able to do and know is that we can also generate knowledge, right? And I think there's an old adage that knowledge is power, but so often Black people have been the subjects of study and have been told about ourselves. And we really want to be able to engage in research and evaluation and do it in ways that supports our community, builds knowledge, and allows us to act in ways that really supports Black women and girls. I think there's this opportunity for us when we think about power, and often happens when we're talking about Black women and girls, is that, as you said, we're dispossessed. We do not have power, but we can reclaim that. I think it's really important through our work to be able to support young people and directly impacted people to reclaim the power that they have always had, but maybe never felt connected to because of the systems that have been pressuring and coming down on them. And so we're really, I think for us, it's so important to create those spaces for Black girls and directly impacted folks to see themselves and know that they are experts. We see them as experts. The world should see and understand them as experts. And we want to create those opportunities, because the truth is, for all of the work that we're doing, the folks who know how best to resolve the issues are the folks who have been directly impacted by these systems. And so rather than thinking, oh, I'm a smart person with a PhD, I know, the reality is the young people that we work with, the directly impacted people we work with, know better. And so I really see it as our job as supporting them and helping them to get their voices out there. It shouldn't just be the ivory tower whose voices and research and knowledge is valued. But the knowledge that we create in our own communities is important and needs to be uplifted as well.
Whew. So we're talking about power, and we're talking about helping folks see their power, and we're going to come to healing and joy. But I think I want to make sure that y'all have an opportunity to just also share some of the concrete ways in which what we're talking about here, right, is these values, these deeply embedded values around just people's humanity, their ability to be and feel powerful. How is that embedded in some of the direct actions you are all taking? And I want to point us towards joy and say, Natalie, I know just this week, the Lighthouse and the Black Women Vote Coalition made history by getting a bill passed that's going to expand postpartum care in Mississippi. Can you talk to us about that effort? What do you want us all to know? And congratulations before I step back.
Thank you. You know, I'm gonna be really honest with you. It is it is one thing to be to decide to be really committed to a thing. It's a whole other thing, especially when you're at war with the legislature that is likewise committed, but committed to the destruction of people who live and show up in all the communities that you show up in, right? So on one hand, it's exciting. Like it's just like, oh yeah, we did that. There were people along the way who quit engaging, you know, who just like this isn't gonna go anywhere. Um, we even experienced some naysayers who were not so keen on some of the tactics that that we were using. And we got some pushback about that. But it's one thing to like keep working toward a thing and then the thing happens. And then it's just like, oh snap. What do we do now? Do we do this again? Like, can this happen again? Or was this a fluke? It is, and it's not because, of course, you know, we didn't do the work, right? It's also the type of thing where, again, I'm just being really transparent. These are not battles that we are accustomed to winning. And so winning is just like, well, this feels strange. And a part of that is just my personality. So yeah, I'm still just processing it. Now the advocacy and organizing team, they're just like on to the next one. Let's go. And I'm just like, but wait, what does this mean? So I think that is probably some self-work that I have to do. Yeah, I was gonna keep talking about that, but I'll save that for not in front of strangers. What's the other part of the question?
I mean, I think you got there. I mean, I just
Okay.
think it's like right, and I want to name that particularly so that it isn't lost for those who may be less familiar with organizing, like what you named around uncomfortable ability. I'll make that a word. You know, just the fact that if we're not making people, including ourselves, uncomfortable, right, then I think we're probably not really reckoning with power. And so I think I mean, you know, Jennifer just shared some more information for the audience around the victory in the chat. So I think folks can pick it up from there. But, you know,
Well,
I
thank
think
you,
you landed.
Jennifer, because I don't think I did a good job, but thank
You
you.
did a good job.
Thank you, sis.
You did a great job. You did a great job. I have to pipe in and say that.
Yeah. And so maybe just inviting Sydney and Jamala to talk a little bit about kind of what's maybe one thing you would want us all to know that you are moving in your organizations right now that is an example of what it's looking like to build power, to lean into helping folks see and wield that power individually and collectively. And then we're going to turn to joy and healing.
I couldn't tell if Sydney was gonna go.
I was like, should I?
Same. I'll pass it right to you after. I mentioned a little bit about our mentorship model. We also are piloting a Speakers Bureau program where we collectively write testimony for local budget hearings, because your budgets show you what you care about, right? Show you your values. So we want to make sure that the young people that are engaged with us and young people in community that have never heard of Girls for Gender Equity, have never heard of social justice movement work, feel empowered and feel welcomed in those decision-making spaces. Like, if you're not going to get a seat at the table, bring your own table, bring your own seat. I think that a lot of the work that we're building now will allow us to have that kind of communication between, there seems to be like a divide between organizers, activists, and people, like people that are not involved in movement work at all. So I think that the work that we're doing right now, and specifically my role, is to bridge that gap to really get the needs of the community uplifted, so the people that are making decisions know that, like, we're paying attention. You can't just sneak this by us. We are going to get the things that we need because we deserve them. So I encourage folks that are in this work to reach out to people that are not. Don't continue talking in like an echo chamber. Don't create spaces of people that are familiar with your work. While that kind of power building is always good and always needed, we need more. So reach out to community members that are not attached to this, but like Sydney said, are the ones most impacted. I'll pass it to you, Sydney.
At NBWJI, one of the things that we are kicking off now is we're calling it the CARES initiative, creating affirming, responsive, and equitable schools. And this has really grown out of work that we have done with Black girls and other youth of color around mental health and well-being. We have been having lots of conversations, as I'm sure all of our organizations have, with young people about their mental health. And sadly, the ways that schools fail them in supporting them and meeting their needs. So this project is starting with engaging a council of Black girls and gender-expansive youth to help us develop a tool that schools can use to evaluate the mental health and wellness services and policies that they implement and have. And there are tools that exist that are organizational assessments for schools, but they're not created with an intersectional lens, and they definitely do not consider the needs and experiences, wants and desires of Black girls and gender-expansive youth. And so we are working on creating that. We are actually recruiting for young folks to join our advisory council. So if you know any Black girls or gender-expansive youth who might, I see your eyes, Natalie, I see it perking up. If you know some young people who would be interested, we really want to engage as many Black girls. And we see this not just as like, help us create the tool, but this is about their leadership development. It is about creating a space for them to name and set expectations for schools. And this would be a tool then that we share with schools, that we help them to use, so that when they're deciding upon X program or Y program, they're using this tool and saying, okay, what's the one that's going to support all of our youth, in particular, Black girls and gender-expansive youth who are so often left out. So that's one of the things that we are doing now. I will drop my email in the chat for folks who may be interested. And there's going to be a suite of other resources coming along the way too. So that's just the beginning.
I just want to appreciate Sydney. I have done so much learning. I'll name like my own evolution of learning around the role of research in movement. And I think one of the things that I've really taken in kind of an absorbed as a fundamental piece of this that's so often not lifted is who are researchers? What are data? And so often data are weaponized against the very people whose lives they represent. And so I'm just really grateful for the work that y'all are doing to really call young folks into their power as researchers, right? Because we can have IARB, we can have all of these obstacles that really fundamentally are about the denial of people's power and lived experiences. So hoping folks can help you build that body of work out. And Natalie, I'm hoping you'll find a way to talk with us all about what you are all doing on the research front. So actually, maybe I'll pause for us to do that. And then I know time is running short, so I want to make sure we turn after that to healing. And I have a question for you all on that. But Natalie, you want to share a little bit about what you are all doing on the research front?
Yeah, very quickly, I'll just add that I think one of the things that's really important for for folks to reconnect with is that research is cultural for us. Like Academy stole that. That is
Mhm.
from us, right? We are storytelling is research. Data collection is sitting on the porch, what we might have called gossip, right? Gathering all the information, making a discernment for ourselves, and then giving a report, right? That's what research is. So we know research. We've been doing research. It is cultural. So yeah, so one of the things that is really important for us is at the Lighthouse is for people um to reaffirm people in that you know how to do this. This does not have to be foreign to you. And also you can be interested in research and not be part of the academy. And so we have a Black Girl Research Institute, and this is our third or fourth year doing the institute. And this year, because it is so important for us to democratize information and knowledge, and again, reaffirm to community that some of the things that have been stolen from us are just cultural aspects, right? Of what we know how to do, knowledge we know how to produce. It is very important to us that people who are interested in research, I'm curious about this. You might not be in school, come apply to be a part of this. And a part of the application, there is a section that's just like, have you been to school? You know, if so, what was your major? Do you have a degree? What's the degree? Oh, okay, cool. Do you have any experience in research? If not, great. What interests do you have? Why do you think this is something that you want to do? That's the end of it, right? It is just about I keep using that word, reaffirmation. One of the things that's really cool about what we're going to do this year, though, is do some comparing and contrasting of what it means to be a person, a Black American, and an Afro Colombian. So we'll get to spend 10 days in Palenque, Colombia, working on some autoethnographies. So yeah, you know, people should apply. People should join us. People should also give us money so that we can take more people.
We'll make sure we drop the link to the donates. All right. And I just want to make sure we are all not missing the chat. And there's some really brilliant stuff. We'll grab that chat for all of you so that we don't lose any of the great ideas here. I want to hold us and pushing us into this next category because it's so fundamental. It's so fundamental to, I think, the work that each of you are holding, to your individual humanity in this, and the ways in which when you name your own humanity, but also like reckon with the ways in which the forces of the nonprofit industrial complex and philanthropy and so many of these things stand in the way of wellness. It makes the work that much more challenging. So I want to point us to healing. And I just want to invite you all, because it feels very connected to what you just named, each of you, right? Just to share with us how does healing show up in your work and in your organizations? And what do you want us in this conversation, right? What would you want us to know about that and why? So how does healing show up? You know, and maybe I want to say one thing as like for me central to this. If we're going to really end the, you know, the existence of schools as extensions of the carceral state, then we need to stop pretending that healing is about fixing broken children or fixing broken adults, and really get to like fully integrated and embedded ways of caring for each other. So you've all already given us a roadmap in this conversation, but how would you want us to really hold healing in ways that you do?
Thank you for that question, Jamie. And for your added context, like it's definitely not about fixing broken people. I think that healing is oftentimes not applied to the people that are doing the work. So like the organizing managers, the CEOs, the directors of marketing and storytelling, like those folks are not necessarily using the tools to heal themselves that they share with the young people in their community, or that they share with the survivors of patriarchal violence that they serve. I think that GGE is trying to do better, especially in response to this ongoing pandemic that we find ourselves in, that is attacking our health and also our physical and mental wellness in terms of police brutality. So we're trying to survive multiple different attacks on our bodies and our minds at the same time, while providing services for a community that is experiencing the exact same things. One thing that we're doing, and we have been doing since the pandemic started, is having Wellness Wednesdays, where we take half days on Wednesdays. We don't schedule meetings after 3 p.m. And we're also giving resources like yoga classes, Reiki, sound baths, coupons to get massages, like things that support our wellness because of the work that we're doing. We also don't have meetings every other Friday. There's no meeting Fridays because we know that we're meeting so much, like we're talking to each other so much to keep up with all of the things that are working against us. But we don't want to be burnt out either. A lot of the things that we do for young people are send out care packages or DoorDash gift codes. Like, you shouldn't have to worry about what you're going to eat for dinner after you sat on a hearing call for 4 hours trying to speak for 3 minutes, to talk about your experience in schools because you're not getting what you need. And then we want to center joy. Like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, last year, I was running a national program called National Agenda for Black Girls. We did a joy-centered event that featured dancers, singers, poets, uplifting their talents and using their talents to bring happiness to the folks that were listening, to the folks that were watching. Because your existence can sometimes feel like an act of like political warfare. We try to show that your existence also can bring peace. Your existence also can bring happiness and should be celebrated.
I think, you know, we're thinking about healing in two ways. I think, Damala, all of the things that you said about how we care for ourselves in this work and how organizations and institutions can support us is so important. And those are things that we are trying to think about and do better at the National Black Women's Justice Institute. We are super small and building, so we're not fully at the stage of GGE, but we're kind of starting at this earlier place of thinking about what are our values and really doing some deep work, naming what our values are as an organization and as a collective, so that we're able to support each other in that, and wellness and care is really core to our values as well. I have to say, for me personally, that as part of my own healing, being a part of this organization has been so important. I have been doing research and evaluation for a long time in spaces that have not been led by Black women, where Black women really haven't been present. And I have felt like I have not belonged, and it was really hard. But to be in a place where I'm surrounded by Black women, and Black women who also care deeply about ending the criminalization of Black women and girls, has been so good for my spirit. And I know also for the other women who work at the National Black Women's Justice Institute. So we're really just trying to ensure that the organization is a space where people can continue to feel healed and supported. I think for all of the women of color on this call, we know how hard it can be to work in white dominant spaces and the trauma that we carry forward as a result. On the other front, as far as our work, we are really trying to be intentional and approach research and the capacity building that we do differently, and that when we are engaging directly impacted folks, we want the experience to be generative and not to be extractive. So we're really trying to think intentionally about how we do that. And we also recognize that as far as the research that we're doing, we are asking people tough questions, really emotional stuff. And we have to do more than what the institutional review boards require of us, which is to give people a sheet of paper that says, hey, call this 1-800 line if you're feeling triggered. So we have been exploring and trying things like trying to create mental health and wellness support groups for folks, or even connecting them with one-on-one counseling after an interview to really just support them more fully, as well as doing things like sending wellness packages, saying we care, right? We really do appreciate the folks who are willing to share their stories with us. And we're just trying to think about how do we do that better and differently. I know that you all on this call probably have great ideas that we can learn from. So if there's anyone who has thought about this, we would love to learn more, because this is really important to us. Research needs to be done differently, and healing needs to be something that we prioritize for the folks who are brave enough to share what they've gone through with us.
I think the only thing I'll add is to a point that Damala made about those who are caretakers also learning to take care of themselves. That has been a thing that I have been I was going to say working on, but that's not true. Struggling with for a long time, and wrestling with the idea that this, again, this work is hard, and there are parts of this work that require me to sacrifice. Like there are some sacrifices that come with doing this kind of work, and that does not mean that I am the sacrifice. And so that is, I've been dealing with that. I've been wrestling with that. It's been an active wrestle since last year. You know, there are things that you know, and then there are things that are put in your face that you can't turn away from because your back is also against the wall. And one of the ways for a very long time that I took care of myself, what I told myself is that one of the ways that I was taking care of myself was by taking care of other people, taking care of staff, taking care of the young folks that we worked with, living a life in honor of the women in my family. Upon further examination, it's, am I living my life in service to or in honor of, right? So it's asking all those kinds of questions. And so, yeah, the healing. Man, I sound so depressing on this call, but I'm not depressed. I'm not depressed because I know depression. Yeah, it's just a lot of, Zora Neale Hurston says some years are for questions and others for answers. And I'm just asking a whole lot of questions. I'm just asking a whole lot of questions.
Well, your questions are an invitation to all of us to learn and to sit with being uncomfortable, you know, around. I will just name for you all with such gratitude for your radical vulnerability, right? Like, I think each of us in the positions of leadership that we sit in, I think probably come into confrontation, I know I do every day, with what we are told a strong leader looks like and how they act. And what you have each just modeled for us and the ways you answered that question, both very deeply personally, as well as with care for others, right? Is that a lot of what we have been sold is simply false. It's a manifestation of white supremacist culture. And the more that we get uncomfortable with that, like the closer we're getting to the truth that is about the power we've been holding together this whole conversation. So, and we are getting close to, we're about to be at time in this conversation. So I just want to name a couple of things and invite us to close with a two-part question. And if you each want to offer your quick takes in response to this. First, Sydney, you invited our audience to kind of stay connected, and each of you did with some of the things that have been shared in the chat. So just inviting our audience to know that we'll find a way to share some of those resources in the chat. But if you have thoughts you want to share, please do drop them in the chat now. And think of this as just what we hope will be an ongoing invitation to connection, to community, to care for each other, to learning, and to building power together. But in order to do that, to kind of lean into the invitation that each of the responses we just heard around healing offer, I just want to invite each of you here with us today to share, how are you finding joy, and how can we create spaces for Black girls' joy? And don't miss the chance, please, to share, what can folks do to take action and support you in your work? So joy and action, what would you want us all to take away? And thank you for allowing me to throw such a big two-part question at you.
Oh, I can start. I'll start with the second part, the action and support. That feels more straightforward. Follow us on social media, GGENYC. also encouraging folks to see how their passions are connected, intertwined, and bound up together with other people's passions, other people's fights. Right now, I know that folks are watching with bated breath the fight to stop Cop City in Atlanta. That fight is everywhere. It's not just in Atlanta, it's everywhere. It's in all of our cities. And the police that are on the streets are the police that are in schools. Those are the same police. They're engaging with our young people for hours at a time in a day and reinforcing that school to prison pipeline. Like, I want us to really think about what we care about and see how it's connected to what others care about. And that when the folks most marginalized and most displaced are supported, everyone else will be okay. So definitely follow us on socials. We'll be posting about our efforts to support Stop Cop City, our continued campaign for police-free schools, our growing campaign for repro justice everywhere. We're lucky to live in New York, but don't want to take that for granted. The places that I'm finding joy, I've been working a lot this past week and this week specifically, so that's what's giving me pause. But I find joy in the folks that I have around me. Like Sydney said, it is an honor to be working at an organization that is Black women-led, Black immigrant women-led. It's a joy to be able to surround myself with young people who are open to exploring their identities, open to exploring the systems that we live within, and like excited to create a new world. Those are the things that bring me joy. Also, my brother just had a baby, so that's bringing me so much joy. I'm an aunt for the first time. Trying to like stave off the baby fever because I'm not ready. But so excited to have little ones around me. And also my elders. I've been making more intentional time to hang out with my aunts who are in their like 70s and 80s, to get that storytelling that Natalie talked about, because it's not written down anywhere. Like, our histories are often erased because no one's writing them down. So it's a joy for me to be able to, I'm getting a little emotional. It's a joy for me to be able to transcribe the stories of my family, the stories of our community. My grandmother's from Guyana. She had 11 children, which is just mind blowing to me. So the ability to transverse the earth with your family and create opportunities for them to grow, leading to me being here talking to y'all. So that definitely brings me joy, and conversations like this. So thank you. Thank you to the panelists, Sydney and Natalie. Thank you, Jennifer, for bringing us together, and Jamie for holding this conversation.
Oh yeah, the plug. You can also follow us on social media at Love Black Girls. And if there are questions about anything, or you're interested in doing more, I think probably the easiest way is to email info@Love Black Girls, and that is like a monitor email address, and we'll point you in the right direction from there. Curating spaces of joy and bravery, for Black girls and other folks for us often looks like just giving space, physical space as often as possible. Um, in our office, it is not uncommon for particularly college students, for whom transportation is not as much of an issue. If you walk in the office, there'll just be random college students laid out on couches. That's joy, right? They just need to get away. And some of them are not even active participants in programs that we have. They might just be people that are attached to people that we're doing something with. Alumni, just alumni of programs, just stopping by the office. People talked about care packages and sending folks things. That's one of the ways that we try to just introduce or reintroduce moments of happiness and pleasure into the girls' days, just whenever you might randomly get a card. We really like cards. So yeah, those are things. I think for me, finding, stepping back, and feeling at ease with a decision to step back for a certain amount of time. I can step away for a weekend and things won't fall apart. And if they do fall apart, then we'll figure it out when that happens. But I don't have to catastrophize. I have a problem saying the word, but catastrophize about it, right? I don't have to let my anxiety get the best of me about what might and what if and that kind of thing. So that is one of the ways I am grasping at joy. And then very similar to Damala, I think you probably think I'm just copying off you, but I'm not. I spend a whole lot of time with my mom and my aunts as often as I can. Sometimes I forget that they are old, and I just have so much fun with them. And then sometimes they'll say something, and I'll be like, "Oh, you tripping? Oh, right, you're old. You can't say that. Let me help you with that." But I enjoy it. I just enjoy them so much. And I'm fortunate that I can say that about my family, right? This is my last thing. I got a text from one of my aunts yesterday. She was like, "Happy International Women's Day." And she was like, "Thanks for all that you do for Black girls and women." And I was like, it just meant so much to me. I actually tweeted about it, and I was just like, I love that I can love the way they love me. And so, yeah, those are moments of joy for me.
All of that was so beautiful. I want to get to where you are, Natalie, with enjoying your mother. I love my mom, but she drives me a little nutty. So, although, I'm spending calling her a lot more. So I guess I'll start with joy. What brings me joy? It's such a tough question. I think the things that I'm really trying to focus on as far as joy are the time that I spend with the people I love and care about. That is just the time when I feel the lightest, the happiest, when you can let go of all of the work or just kind of, pour onto someone else all of the things, and it's okay. And so just being able to spend time with people I love and who love me, it's probably how I find the most joy. I'm also working on trying to create a little bit of emotional space between me and the workday. I don't know about you all, but I can sit at my desk for hours on end and be like, oh, I haven't drank water, I haven't eaten, I haven't seen the sunshine. So I'm really trying to intentionally carve out time to go for a walk and be in the sun now that the sun is out later and brighter, and birds are chirping earlier than they should be, but that's a whole nother issue. And I have two cats who really bring me a lot of joy. And so when they yell at me in the morning for food, or nuzzle against my face, or just sit on me, or just do something stupid, that really brings me a lot of joy. And just kind of being able to laugh at the mundane is, I think, probably where I find most of my joy. As far as a call to action, I think, Damala really said this so nicely and beautifully, actually, both of you did, about like creating space for young people. Just if we can create space where they feel like they can be their whole selves, with all of the stuff that they love about themselves, all the stuff that they don't like about themselves, and just remind them that they are amazing and brilliant no matter what. That to me is the most important thing. In addition to remembering we have so much we can learn from young people. That is one of my favorite things, being in a space with young people. And, I feel like the mind blown emoji, literally. I'm like, what? I just had a conversation with a young person this morning. I was like, what? How are you doing this already? I was like, barely a sentient being, and you have done all of these things at 15. I was like, disaster. But today, they're just so amazing. And I think it's so hard for them it can be hard for them to recognize how amazing they are. And so I think if you can just remind them, that's the most important thing that we can do, because they're the ones who are going to be taking over this work and who are doing this work and will be leading it in the future. And I just don't think we tell Black girls that they're amazing enough. They need to hear it all the time.
Well, let me just say, with so much gratitude, with the full sincerity of my heart, you are all amazing. And I'm so grateful that each of you has put your trust in CJSF, and you have our commitment to continuing to uplift your work in ways that I hope will allow you to continue your journeys towards joy and healing in the daily and in the big picture. And I just want to suggest that we close this conversation with hope that folks could find new ways to continue and to build forward. That Kamisha Smith shared in the Q&A, that the healing we have to do while we're healing others is uncomfortable when you've been a warrior for so long. So embracing those of you who've joined us in the chat in this conversation as our audience today. I know so many of you, and I know how amazing you all are. So let's hold that together. Let's hold the strength of this relationship as a really critical ingredient in the work we're doing to support ourselves and others in building power. So with that, I'll say thank you very much for being here.